right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to take just a minute here and do some introductions while we get some continued people coming in. It looks like we're just passing about the 100 mark right now, and an email's going out. I think just a minute ago with the live feed, so we should pick up the next. We actually have a ton of attendance planned for this, so we're looking forward to it. So I'm Mike Ramsey with Nifty Marketing. And thank you for coming on. I just also want to throw out a huge thank you to Attorney at Work and the team there for helping to kick this off, spread the word. So we're co-hosting that with them and also with Billie from Modern Law. So would you like to introduce yourself, Billie, and kind of let everybody know what you do and where you're at and everything like that? And then after that, we'll have Chad do the same.
Cool. Yeah. So my name is Billie Tarascio. I am a family law attorney and the owner of Modern Law in the Phoenix area. And I'm super excited to be part of this webinar.
Hey, thank you.
Awesome.
And
My name's Chad Hinkle. I'm the marketing director here at Nifty. I've probably spoken with some of you, but yeah, I've worked in the legal marketing industry now for over 7 years, and just excited to be here and share a little more information with you about what you can do to help your law firm thrive. So should be good.
All right, thanks. So to just let everyone know how this goes, we have a few people behind the scenes at Nifty, Dax and Nick, who will be fielding the questions, and then they'll look through those and then read those out loud to us as time goes on. Before we get to that section, though, I have a brief presentation. It's not super brief, I guess. It'll take a few minutes. But we've pulled quite a bit of data that we want to share with you just about what we've seen with COVID-19 and law firms, different search phrases, website traffic, everything like that. So we're looking forward to sharing that. As we do so, if you have questions, just continue to feed the Q&A. And you'll see that, I think if you roll over your Zoom app, there's a little Q&A box and you can ask in there. So go ahead and do that while we get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kick it over to the presentation to start. Okay, we looking good? You guys can see it? Cool, okay. All right, so this has kind of been what I think the last few weeks have been like for everybody, right? This is how I definitely feel. So I'm sorry for that. You know, it's definitely unexpected. I had the very same reaction, and I can say this though, and we can talk about this in Q&A if you want to, because I've learned a ton. I got the PPP loan funded to, like, it was Friday. We got the funding on Friday. Document signed Friday and everything else. So I'm feeling a little better. I'm a little out of the fire hose, but still it's quite kind of wild. So next is this. We created a group on Facebook, a COVID-19 support group for law firms. You can get there by typing in this bit.ly link. So it's bit.ly/help-my-law-firm. And feel free to join the group. It's just a ton of lawyers talking about what's going on in their firms, asking questions. We've dealt a ton with the PPP loan stuff, and so that's been interesting and a good resource. So feel free to hit that up. And with that, we're going to dive in. The first thing I want to talk about is a study from Harvard Business Review, and this is looking at times of crisis and what they've seen and what they've learned from looking at other times of crisis and basically other recessions. So they look at different type of businesses and they see that they fell into 4 categories: essentials, treats, postponables, and expendables. The nice thing about law is most law firms fall into these 2 categories depending on the type of service you're offering, right? But it talks about consumer behaviors during these times and what will happen. So there's still people who are continuing forward like, you know, nothing ever happened, but then there's some that have caution. So in this study, they just talk quite a bit about what to do. The thing that I just wanted to share right out of the gate is, because law is not necessarily something that falls into the postponables or expendables, like you'll survive this. It's going to be rough in a lot of cases, but when push comes to shove, it will come back. People will still need the services. There will be a lot of change, but you know, you're not hit nearly as bad as certain industries, and so there's that to be grateful for. Okay, the study goes on to say this: on average, increases in marketing spend during the recession boost financial performance throughout the year following the recession. Very important information, you know, and it's hard because you got a marketing guy, and you know that can come across as self-serving, but just understand, like, we started Nifty 2008 recession, and it was, you know, that was a rough time. That was like the start of it, and we saw this then. So, you know, time will go, things will come back. You'll make it. Our hope is to give you as much information as possible to just make this, you know, something that you can use to get through it with as few, you know, casualties as possible. So I'm calling it the state of law firm marketing during COVID-19. The first thing I want to do is just educate you on some phrases and what we're looking at so that you have a good understanding before we dive into the data. So if you do a search for any type of law, you know, with the city in there or just on your mobile device, this is an immigration lawyer search in San Diego, you'll have something that looks fairly similar to this. You might have local service ads at the top. Then you'll have your normal ads, and then you'll have some more ads, and then you'll have your local results and maps. This is all Google-owned territory so far. And then you'll have organic at the bottom of that, okay? So that is roughly what a search result looks like. As you scroll down, you'll see that, okay? Now let's look at some Google Trends data, and this is up-to-date data. I pulled this last night at like way too late. So just, I'm going to look across a couple industries to just show you how to look at this. Now, I think this would be a great tool for you to use yourself. It's free. You just type in Google Trends, and you can type in phrases, and Google shows what's happening with the amount of searches on these phrases, like the trend information. So here's what's interesting. The topic of divorce, which covers tons of words compared to just the keyword, the topic, we saw a big dip right up until, you know, like starting beginning of March, and then we had the announced quarantine across, you know, many states that were starting to come in around the 16th. And from that point, we've started to see divorce subject trending back up to normal levels. Very interesting. Okay. Divorce lawyer is behind this, and that makes sense. People start researching information, but they haven't necessarily gotten back to where they're actively looking for a lawyer yet, because they're still at the top of that funnel of just research information, right? So as you see here, though, we've started to see about a week after that March 15th, closer to April, we start seeing that we've bottomed out on that phrase and it's starting to turn around. Okay. Estate planning was fairly similar. There was a big dip, and then all of a sudden, as people were home, we started seeing a big rise on that topic, or content related to that topic. Okay. Bankruptcy, this one was the biggest shocker for me. I actually thought that we would see a lot more or a lot faster trending on this. But if you look at bankruptcy lawyer, that's the blue line down below, fairly flat. The term, so when we look at just bankruptcy overall, it started to trend down, but yet again, I think we've hit bottom and we're starting to see trend data moving up on that. Then looking at personal injury, yet again, about that same time, we saw the dip, trend starting to head back, okay? I think there was so much fear in everybody during this time frame, like leading up to state notices and everything else, that everybody was completely consumed in what was happening with COVID, and everything else in life paused for a little bit. But all signs are pointing to, like, you know, basically showing that old styles, old concepts, old things that people were working on beforehand are starting to creep back into their lives. Okay. Now let's look at website data, and this is where it gets, very, very accurate because we can see this data. We work with law firms all across the country in various fields, and so here's what we're seeing: organic search traffic, or the free search traffic from Google, and leads. So organic traffic is down about 28%, which means organic leads are down about that same amount, 28%, right? So that's what we're seeing across all areas of law on average, is 28%. Now there's some very big outliers on this. We've seen some that are affected up to about 70 to 80% on the very high end. And that would be, that's in a place of full quarantine in a space, like a space that's completely devastated by that. For instance, personal injury, something like that, or also immigration. And then we've seen some that have been hit far less than this, okay? So we broke down the data by practice area, and here's what we found. Immigration overall across the states, and in the data we had access to, down about 43%, criminal defense 31%, bankruptcy was flat, meaning not much change. And then personal injury 29%, and family 28%. And this data, we used comparison periods. We looked at from March 16th through the end of March and into April to gather this data, to just give a good benchmark against this. That's when everything was starting to shut down. Now, what's interesting is that's organic. When we look at paid, we see a totally different story. Now, paid would be, Google AdWords in this particular case. So paid clicks went down about 4%, but market share for those who continue to run advertising shot up about 22% on average, and leads went up about 10%. All makes sense. And the reason it makes sense is because as more and more advertisers pause, and there's some data showing, it was showing that they thought that, Google, Facebook, et cetera, might be down about 30% in advertising. And I don't know where they're pulling that information from. I think it's a big guesstimate, but we are seeing that there's enough pause in the market that those that were willing to continue to advertise continued to basically pick up the leftover, and so their market share went up dramatically. The benefit of that is, it also affects the cost. Cost can either stay flat or go down, which is a little wild, right? It's kind of like this. People are like, well, why does this work? What's the deal with this? And here's what it comes down to. It's Google's business model, right? What we've seen is this. Google has not found another way to make money other than ads. And so they've continued to try to find ways to push advertising and push the amount of clicks to ads. And so right here, this shows like Google's revenue. And you can see an overwhelming percentage of it, 86% is basically all attributed to ads. So that's their lifeblood, and they're going to make sure that people continue clicking on ads. We've had a couple Google reps from our premier Google partner status go and speak with us at events. And at one of those events, our rep said this, said over 50% of clicks are going to paid ads now. And that was the first time I'd heard anybody mention that or any reference from a Googler about this information. And so here's what that means. Let's say, we're seeing this big shrink in total people that are searching overall. Well, if you're in an organic spot, let's say you rank #1 organically, then you're going to see that same amount percentage of shrink. And that's what we saw. And that's why our data showed that about 28% of that traffic is gone right now. But on paid, it was very rare to have a law firm that was buying the entire market, meaning they bought 100% of all the paid traffic. That's 50%. That's 50% of the total people coming to Google that are clicking on ads, and they were buying all of that 50%, right? So you might have only owned about 8% of that, or 10% of that, or something like that. As people pause ads, and even as there's less searchers, there's still people searching. and there's still people looking for your services. So those who are running ads continued to have them click, even though all these other areas were down. So this is why ads could be flat or potentially higher converting right now, even though there's less people in the market. There's more pauses, and those who are continuing to basically buy ads are benefiting greatly from that. Okay, so here's what it comes down to. If you're not playing Google's game, this is where your new office location is, and this is what Google thinks about you, basically. And it leads pretty much to this. So I think we're at the point where if you have not been running ads, if you haven't been doing any type of paid advertising, I think that now is the biggest reason why you should be. The data is fairly clear that those running ads have benefited, not in every single case, but on average, those have benefited. Okay. So what should you be doing? And what should your plan overall be? This is what I call the pillars of search and social, and the balance that you need to take across these areas. You need to have a balanced approach to your website, links, shares, and ads, your Google My Business listing and your local listings, and then getting reviews and getting feedback. Like, if you have plans across this would be the overall strategy with tactics baked into each of these areas. Then you can survive this, and you can come out on the other side doing really well and position yourself to really grow after things go back to whatever our new normal is. So for some of this information, and especially as I get into later and share a graphic we've put together, we've looked at thousands of different law firms in the top largest 50 metros across America. And we've been doing this since 2016 to just benchmark data so that you can put yourself and your firm up against other firms in these markets. And so this is how we came to the idea that, hey, these are all areas that matter. These are things you need to be thinking about. Now, I could talk in depth on tons of these subjects, but we want to get on to your questions, and we can hit up on those. So I'm just going to share some brief COVID-19 specific things for this. First is fix your major listings, starting with Google My Business. So you can log into Google My Business. It's just google.com/business. And I want you to see what this information is and really understand it. So pull out your phone right now and search for your specific law firm. I'm going to run this pretty quickly, just so we can get to the Q&A. But here's an example, friend of ours, Ben Glass, and I did this when we're at his conference, so it's a nice graphic that shows the information. The information all at the top is all Google My Business. You don't even get to click on his website till you go down a couple different scrolls, and then you see the Ben Glass website, right? And that's when you type in his website. When his name, right, you still see all this Google My Business information. When you just do a search like Las Vegas personal injury attorney, then you end up with usually three, sometimes there's an ad here, so there'd be 4 local search results, right? And this is Google My Business information. What happens when you click on this? Like, we know what happens when you click here, you go to the sites. When you click here, you go to the site. But when you click on these listings, you don't even go to the website. You go to more Google My Business information. It stays on Google. So it shows the importance of making sure you understand that you have all of your information absolutely up to date, especially during COVID-19. And there's something called Google Posts. This is a Google post on our listing. And Google actually created a COVID-19 update version of posts that you can do on your listing. So you can log in and create one of these. And here's ultimately what we did for one of our clients and how that looks, right? It's a good message for the Vegas market. And then he talks about the fact that they're still open and they have the technology in place and they're supporting people during this time. This shows up on the listing. There's a high probability that people will see this before they ever even click on your website. All right. In our study, we found that only 25% of top ranking law firms are even using Google Posts. But it's a huge increase from before. It's a 316% increase. So this is definitely something that is been picking up major steam, and I think COVID's going to push it a lot. make sure that people understand on your Google My Business listing, not just your website, that you're still open. Real quickly, here's another thing that drives home the importance of this. Here's some data. This is for a law firm. They had 344 visits from their Google My Business listing to their website in a month period. But look at how many phone calls they had of people who never went to their website. This is all just in Google My Business, right? And so that's the only interaction they had with the company was their Google My Business listing before they made that call. So ensure that your updates around COVID-19 are being published there as much as you are trying to do that on your website. Step 2, you've got to make reviews part of your customer experience. Now, the problem with this currently, anybody who's leaving reviews, those reviews are basically being gathered, but they do not show up on your listings right now. So if you've been struggling with that, it's because basically Google's cut staffing. I think the quality control side of this, those offices that were not in this country are closed down, and the employees I don't think are working from home to do the quality control because they only gave them access to Google's system at work. That's my guess. So currently all these reviews are just basically being piled up. People can still leave them, but they don't show up on listings. Okay. What we found in our study before this, and this shows, you can look and see where you're at in comparison to this, but the top ranking firms averaged 50 reviews, and that was up 78% compared to 2018. So big change in the amount of reviews on an average law firm. Okay, the next step is getting your website in order. This is a client, Nifty Law, and we did a couple things on his site and across most all of the sites that we work with. One is putting up a banner, making sure people understand that you are still open and how you're able to continue to communicate or work on cases, right? In this case, Farhan actually wrote a letter and worked with the team on this and put that on the site so that people could click on that and learn more about what they're doing. It's just a very nice feature to allow people to understand exactly what's going on. This information, is, as I showed, is also on Google Posts. I would be interested after this to see which one gets more views, the Google Post or the website, right? But make sure you have these done, okay? Then step 4, get local links, likes, and shares. And here's a few examples of that. Ramos Law Group, they put together basically how COVID has affected child custody and visitation and access during spring break and school closures. And they had thousands of shares across this content. I mean, thousands of shares and tens of thousands of visitors, which I just think is absolutely awesome. Because there were so many questions around this type of content and this type of thing. Now, does this lead to immediate cases? No, but it sets you up to be a resource for people as that continues to happen, as courts open back up, as people start looking at this. For one, you can cookie everybody that visits your website to something like this so you can continue to market towards them. But second, you become the person that they knew that gave them the information that was needed. Now I'm going to show you a couple things that I think are missed opportunities. All right, so if I'm in PI, this is something we've been looking at, and here's this California traffic accidents report. Now, to me, this is what should have been put together by a law firm, and I have seen some be able to get this data. UC Davis, in this case, put this together, and they picked up tons of news coverage because they showed that traffic accidents were cut in half across California. Okay. Now here's another one. This is estate planning, and I think it's a miss also. Okay. If I'm, right now, I've been thinking a ton about estate planning because I'm like, hey, I've got to have a will in line. I've got to do all these different things. And so if I start looking for information around estate planning, then it's interesting to see that a lot of different law firm websites have things, yet the titles of the pieces don't lead to clicks. And so what happens is HuffPost comes in, Huffington Post, and they have a really good title. Hey, they're in news, they understand this. A guide to estate planning during coronavirus, right? What am I going to click on here? Am I going to click on the coronavirus resource toolkit, or am I going to click on this guide to estate planning, right? This has estate planning information in there, but it doesn't answer my immediate question or what I was searching for. And so how you're titling the pieces, like, don't think about law, think about somebody like me that's looking for the information and what do I want to find. So I saw a lot of law firm websites that talked about resources, considerations, but it didn't give me a title that made me feel like I was going to get the information I was looking for. Okay, last step, you got to pay for traffic. Got to start paying for it. As mentioned, 50% of clicks are going to paid ads. Now let's talk, and that was on Google. Now let's talk about Facebook. So across our clients running Facebook ads, we're seeing 16% increase in ad reach. The numbers as far as the amount of users active on Facebook right now are very, very high, and advertisers are pausing, right? So we're seeing a 27% increase in ad clicks and an 8% drop in the cost or the spend necessary to get that. So that data, like, it shows like you can get more right now for less. So here's just a few ideas that have been done. First one, Ken Peck, who's been awesome through this. He's been, I've been in email communication with him just constantly back and forth on just different ideas. And you know, he has this book, an ebook that was put together. He's getting 84 cents per click on it, and this is like brand new launched, right? So this data is super fresh. And has had 53 clicks on downloading this, you know, getting a divorce during COVID. And then for personal injury, we have a bunch of different ads trying to target different things about, you know, promoting and helping Vegas, making sure people know that he's still open. And we saw 253 clicks through on these, right? So there's plenty of opportunities that can be yours. The one thing to keep in mind is this, and this is an update from Google. They're like, your ads can get caught up if they're mentioning the wrong words, such as COVID-19, you know, and so you've got to be careful on the type of phrases you're using in the ads, because they're basically saying they do not want sensitive events being mentioned through those ads. Content that potentially capitalizes or lacks reasonable sensitivity towards a natural disaster, conflict, death, public health emergency, or other tragic events. So the phrases in there, it's just the difference between getting an ad online quickly or potentially getting it caught up in needing to be approved manually, which can take quite a bit of time when they don't have the staffing currently. All right, tons of information, right? We've shot through a lot. And so take a quick break here. And I just want to share one piece and then a couple of different opportunities, and then we'll dive into the Q&A. So this piece right here is something that we've put together. And when I talked about the thousands of research points that we did as we looked at those markets and all the law firms in those markets, we compiled all of that data, okay? And we have the averages as far as, like, you know, average amount of phrases on the page, you know, how many reviews, not just on Google, but on Facebook and Avvo and Yelp. And we looked at different categories that were used. We just looked at a ton of information, okay? And we compiled this, and we have currently the ability to score your company up against this data, right? So if you go to niftymarketing.com/score, then we can send you a free report. It'll take us a little bit of time. I'm sure we'll get a little backlogged on this, but we'll work through it as quickly as possible. And we can basically send you, you know, here's where you're at compared to all of this data and the averages we saw across the different areas of law, okay? So make sure you check that out. And then I also wanted to remind you to look at this COVID-19 support group for law firms on Facebook. And you can find that at the bit.ly/helpmylawfirm. And then just a quick little recap of all the things that you need to do. So step one, go and update your Google My Business. I think this is the no-brainer, easiest thing you can do to ensure that people know that they can continue to contact you, how to do that, and that you're still open. and you know what your hours are, all of that. Step two, make sure that on your reviews you understand they're not showing up right now, but that doesn't mean to not continue to ask, right? You can continue to ask. Those will be backlogged, and I think that once things go back to the somewhat new normal, then we'll see that influx just be published live to the web. Step three, make sure that you look over our study for one, but if have compelling content on this subjects that matter. Every area of law has something that COVID-19's affecting, and I think that there's opportunity to publish something that's useful to people, that gives them the information they're looking for with a good title, because so many law firms aren't. All right. Step four, links, likes, and shares. You can get them. And we shared some examples of that, and we can talk more about that in the Q&A. And then step five, you have got to start paying for ads. Right now, we're seeing that for some firms that have lost a dramatic amount of organic, ads are what's keeping them going. And here's what's interesting. Somebody's searching for a divorce lawyer on Google today. The traffic's not all gone. There's still people doing this. The question is, even though that number of people is down, and you saw the data points, those who are running ads might be flat, meaning they're not losing it. So they're still getting the same amount of people through ads as they were before, potentially even more right now, simply because there's that opportunity. There's that the folks that have kind of acted out of fear and have missed the chance to be running those ads. So with that, that's everything on the presentation, and now we can kick it back over and do Q&A with all of us.
All right, can you guys hear me? This is Dax.
Yeah, I think Chad and Billie are both still on mute, so we'll unmute now and then get going.
Okay, I'm gonna have Chad talk to, ask Billie a little bit about what she's doing and kind of what we've been doing for her, and speak to that side of it before I introduce some questions. So Chad, I'll turn the time over to you.
Yeah, so Billie, right when this all started to happen, we got in contact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, okay, we are not talking about what we thought we were going to be talking about, that's for sure. Because this is like week one, right?
Yeah, it was really early on.
Yeah, so can you talk to us a little bit about your thought process about, what your thought process behind the intake services for family law firms, how that's changed, potentially also just, the merger opportunities and the counsel, for retiring attorneys. I mean, that whole thing, you saw an opportunity and we basically tried to help you execute on it. So just walk us through that and just kind of what your thinking was behind all that. I thought it was really interesting and good.
Well, so yeah, you and I had this great conversation about, okay, slow down. What do we do now? And there were two things that came out of our conversation. The first was that, and this is true for modern law, our leads are down, but the leads that are calling need help right now. They're not tire kickers. They need excellent, available, present lawyers. And that means having an intake team that can process that, even though we've got a stay-at-home order. So we have an intake team that works with not only modern law, but other law firms. And so being able to provide that piece to help the lawyers capture the leads they've got and convert the leads they've got is one of the things that you and I started working on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that stood out to me is as we were talking, you're describing the problem and, you have a solution. I was like, well, what if we could get you just in front of people who are the exact fit, who are likely to need your services? Because one of the issues that everybody's having, and some of you may still be having, is going analog to digital is a big leap for someone who hasn't ever thought about going digital, right? So maybe you can help us understand a little bit about what steps have you been taking with your law firm to kind of, I don't know, just assist or even counsel other attorneys. I know you're involved in a lot of different groups and stuff, so I'm just kind of curious, what's your experience been since then? How's that gone?
So for us, we were already positioned to work remote. So the tech and the procedures weren't really an issue. We only had to make slight tweaks to our business model procedurally in order to operate fully remote. And but there's a lot of lawyers out there that are not in that position. Their files are at their office, they can't get there, and they're not able to work right now. They're not able to access everything and optimize the situation that we're in. So we are still, even with optimizing the tech and the procedures, we're still suffering productivity hits because the whole world is. Like, right. The world is just slowed down. Like there's isolation, there's anxiety, there's depression. So those are the things that we're really focused on. The tech and the processes was the easy part. And now we're really working on the more complicated, like human aspects of getting through this and managing your children while you manage your clients.
Yeah, so, I'm impressed none of us have had kids bust in as far, right? Like,
right.
You guys, if you look at my door right here, I actually barricaded my door.
Yes, yes, you did.
Well, to those points though, in talking intake, I read a WordStream report. It's been a week or so, and they have tons of data. They're probably one of the bigger data gatherers in the PPC space. And they found in legal that 30% of phone calls since COVID-19 have gone unanswered, right, in paid ads. That's wild. Like, and so that speaks right to what you're talking about here is, as people have made this transition, there's a lot of balls being dropped, and like, you can't 30% of people, and if you're saying these are folks right now, if they're calling, it's because they need help immediately. Right. That's a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, totally agree. Like the people who are calling right now have a sense of urgency, and they're having emergencies that we can solve, but many firms are simply not set up to process that well right now.
Yeah, awesome. Well, good stuff. Okay.
And then the second thing that you and I talked about was there are a lot of lawyers out there who want to figure out how to wind down. Mm-hmm. They're out. They're like, you know what? I have been
I'm out. I'm done. COVID-19. Right?
Well, and I've had one foot in, one foot out for a long time. Yeah. I've been trying to figure out my exit plan. Now I really don't want to do this. What can I do? And I had merged with another lawyer who was in that situation earlier in the year before COVID-19. He was like, hey, I need a law firm that's great to take over my clients, and I want to get some money for it. And we were in a position to do that and to take that on. And so that's the other thing that you and I started doing, was figuring out a campaign to how do we target these lawyers that don't want to do this anymore so that we can take it over and buy them out.
Did we lose? I think we might have lost Chad.
Oh.
Either that or he's holding really still.
Right.
So no, I think, it's interesting because like when you look at the perfect opportunity and time, it is when there's fear in the market if you're going out and looking for these acquisitions. And so for those of you who have put yourself in a financial position where you can weather this, you're going to be fine. And there's other law firms that probably aren't. It is a perfect opportunity. It is like the best time for merger. So no, I think that's very fascinating, and it's not something that I've seen or heard a lot of people talking about during this time because they're so worried about their own practice. But it goes back to the Warren Buffett mentality. He talks about like when everybody else is really hungry and out there, he's really fearful, and that's what was happening in the world of M&A before this. And then as soon as everybody becomes fearful, that's when he gets very hungry. The law firms that take that same approach, I think, can come out of this much stronger and can really leap into future growth much better if they take those opportunities, for sure.
Yeah, we all have to, it's just kind of what you said on, you have to pay to play right now. Like you have to take a bigger risk right now if you want to thrive.
Yep.
Which is scary.
Yeah, and I mean, even for us at Nifty, like that's the path that we've been taking. We've done more public appearances and more type of building things and trying to be out there than ever before, even though we're seeing the contraction that everybody else is seeing as well. Like, but we just understand, like, this is the time that you have to do that in China. So, okay, thank you. Well, those are very fascinating concepts, and hopefully that
Hey,
some opportunity there. Go ahead, Dex.
we had a question directly, I think, to Billy on what you're doing here. Somebody asked, how do you put a price tag on a merger as clients have the right to choose another attorney?
Yeah, so I mean that has to be negotiated between. So what did I do? What did I look at? I looked at the books, I looked at the client stream, and we figured out a way to do it that worked for both of us. And that basically meant he became of counsel and we took over the work. And since he was of counsel, we could pay him a percentage. So it was very simple. And it was a way that created revenue for him and clients for us.
And so he came into the firm for a while, like of counsel. Is there time to? Yeah, of
He
counsel.
doesn't actually do any work.
Yeah, right.
It's fine. That's fine. He's there.
But it keeps the people feeling like if they were going to contact him, he's still there enough. Yeah. He's backed you enough that they can trust your firm.
Right.
Sense. We've actually done the same. We've done a couple of acqui-hires basically that were similar in approach to that, with mixed results. It depends. I think your way of doing it, where if you can keep it under your brand and they do that transition, is a very solid way.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. Chad's trying to get back on. His Wi-Fi pooped out on him, but I'll just start the questions. So first question that we have on here says, Google PPC seems silly when Facebook has increased traffic and reduced rates. Why am I wrong?
All right. So both are in that category, but you've got to understand this. Facebook is more what I would call display advertising. So like thinking of Facebook, it is replacing billboards and TV, right? That's ultimately what you get out of Facebook ads. You're disrupting people that are not thinking about you potentially and trying to get them to think about you, okay? Now there's awesome places for that, but it's much higher in the funnel. And I would say for law firms, like that's a place that needs to be played much more. But when it comes to Google and Google ads, there's still traffic, but these are people who are looking for a specific type of lawyer to do something specific right now. And so while it's more expensive, they're further down the funnel, they're ready to hire. And so the difference there is like, hey, it's phone books, right? When somebody was picking up a phone book and willing to call an attorney, it's because they wanted to call and work out something. So that's the difference. And to me, it's not like, hey, one or the other, both are important. When I'm talking top of the funnel, bringing brand awareness, trying to get people to know who my firm is so we get more branded traffic and people that just contact us directly. Mike Ramsey law firm compared to typing in Burley personal injury attorney or something. Like that's what I want out of Facebook. But man, you're giving up a lot of traffic if you look at Google and say, hey, I'm just going to only focus on Facebook because those on Google are looking right now. Though traffic's down, let's say 25, 35, 45, 55% in some markets, that means there's still on the upside, tons of people still searching. 50% of those clicks are going to ads, and whoever has those ads and who gets that call potentially gets the client.
Yeah. Sorry guys, my internet literally went out. There's a cable one truck right here in front of my house. So I don't know what happened, but I'm back. So one thing to add to what Mike's saying is it also depends on how you're approaching Google traffic, because what I hear most often from law firms that have had a bad experience is that they send the traffic, they approach it from not the bottom of the funnel. They try to approach it from the widest part of the funnel and make ads work for them. And that just means your targeting is really, really off sometimes. And so people are like, well, my call quality was really bad. I feel like I wasted a lot of money. When you start hearing things like that, it's more of a strategy problem than it is a channel problem, because you can't charge someone $50 a click unless there's some inherent value there. right? Unless there's some inherent value there, people wouldn't pay it. It's just a simple, economic thing, right? But that's one thing that we, that should be focused on when you're actually doing a campaign is how can you increase the relevancy of your ads, and how can you increase the, the actual match the expectation of what someone's expecting to see when they click on that ad versus what they're actually typing, right? And so sometimes what happens is someone will go to a landing page, they type in, a personal injury attorney near me, and they go to some homepage that targets like 4 different
personal injury, criminal, they do immigration. And so then it defeats that. Yeah. It's strategy is usually the biggest problem we see, for sure.
For sure. So.
Perfect. Okay. Another question. Any idea when the PPP and other government grants will come in?
Yeah. Mine came. So we've been talking a ton about this. So I went, I bank with Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo dropped the ball as big as you could have, given this. And so there was a bank in my hometown, D.L. Evans Bank, and they were a local lender, and they do a lot of SBA work, and they were very quick to just kind of reach out through the community and say, hey, we got this. We're going to work really hard. If you're not with us, that's okay. We'll still take your application. It's just going to be first come, first serve. We're not going to give our clients compared to the community preference. So I got my app in the Friday that it opened. We had everything ready Thursday night and turned in. Then the documenter updated that Friday night. We had that to them, or not Friday night, Thursday night, or really early Friday morning. We had that to them, I think, by 6 a.m. Friday morning, and our application was submitted. And then we just got funding this past Friday. Now, I have not heard of very many people. I think one other person in Colorado that I've heard of that's gotten funding so far, but I've heard a lot of applications have been approved. And so the way that it works is once your application's been approved, the SBA, gives their blessing on it. But the funds, it's not like the SBA is giving the money to the banks and then the money then comes from the banks to us. The banks are lending the money, and their hope is to get, they get it from the SBA in the future to cover their cover whatever they funded out and get that forgiven. The challenge with that means that every single bank is going to have different processes. So even if you're approved, it might take a little bit longer time for the bank to work out their loan documents and get it done. So, the most important thing is hearing back on your approval, if the bank has everything you need and if you can get approved. So that's at least what I've seen. I'm super, super grateful we didn't stick with Wells and we went with a local bank, because I've heard some nightmares from the Wells, the Bank of Americas, the Chases, and hopefully they're not listening on this call, or my money may disappear from my Wells account.
Awesome. Okay, next question. A few people have asked something similar, but if you have time, can you speak to best practices for getting criminal defense and other sensitive practice area reviews when people want anonymity? Some people also brought up Supreme Court ethics rules with that.
Okay. I'll talk a little on there. Billie, Chad, if you want to pop in on anything, feel free on these. I know your area is family, Billie, but I'm sure you still have some things to say on reviews. So what I've seen in criminal, there's you've got to realize every practice area will have the benchmark of your community and who else is getting reviews in your community. So the nice thing about being in criminal or another hard area, think of divorce, I think of it the same way. People don't necessarily want to broadcast to the world about this situation. But I have been surprised at how many reviews I've seen where people talk about what they did and how they're grateful that they got less time because of a good lawyer, right? Now, as far as different rulings, this mainly goes by state, and different states have different rules. And so I'm by no means a state bar expert. I always basically tell the lawyers that we work with, hey, You have to be the one that's up on the ethics rules to understand what you can and cannot do in asking or responding to reviews. But for criminal, if a person goes online and says, you know, if they basically say parts of the case or anything like that, that's on them. And as long as you don't respond, you should, you know, it's not on you. Now, I know that there's some state bars where there's still question on that, but I haven't heard of too many actions. So the best way to do it though is this: it's a numbers game. If you make the review or feedback experience just part of your overall business process, then you'll get the reviews. And what that means is you ask every single person for feedback. Those that, you know, and as they give feedback, you can say, hey, that's really great. If you get an opportunity to leave that online, would you do that, right? Or as they leave that feedback, they might just be desirous to go and do that themselves. The problem, if you don't ask, if you don't make it part of your business experience, is the only people that will leave feedback are those who are super pissed. And that's just the way it is, because they're motivated to hurt you. Whereas somebody who's happy, the first thing that they're thinking isn't, hey, I'm going to go leave you a review. So in just having that baked into your process, it puts that on a checklist for them, or something that they're at least, you know, thinking about. And if you do that, you're beating most of the people in your community that you'll be competing against, because not many law firms make customer feedback part of their business experience. They just don't. So it needs to be added in. Billie, what's your, I mean, divorce is similar enough in this case. I think that your feedback on reviews would be really awesome.
Well, we've done exactly like what you suggested. It's part of our process. It's scripted. So we, at the end of every single case, we get an NPS score, a net promoter score. And if it's a 9 or a 10, then part of the script and part of the process is, thanks so much. I'm going to send you a place where I'm hoping you can review that online. We have a Zap set up that automatically sends them a thank you card from Amazon for taking the time to talk to our people. So not for leaving the review and before the review is given, but by giving them something in advance, they're more likely to leave a review. And then they also get an email through Zapier that is sent out that says, here's what you told us. So it takes the words that they said and it says, if you want to just copy and paste this, here's the link. So like, how can I make it so easy for the people to leave me reviews?
And that's like, just so people know, because I think people could take that too far. There's a fine line. You're not allowed to incentivize a review, but the way she's doing this is not necessarily incentivizing. It's like, and this is what happens when lawyers read the rules, right? They find closest to the line they can be, which would work and would probably stand up, you know, against Google looking into it, because you're not incentivizing someone to leave you a 5-star review.
No. Yeah.
And one other thing on this, I mean, one saying we have around here is reviews reflect relationships, right? So part of what your job is to make that relationship known. And there's some easy, simple things you can do. I'll share my screen real quick and just show you some simple stuff. One is you can get it, like, one of the main things that we have to talk about here is making it easy. I heard that brought up. So if you want to make it easy, you have to build it into your process, but you also have to make it really easy, like one click and I can leave a review. And there's a ton of tools out there, but if you're listening, you're like, okay, well, how can I possibly do this right now? Well, partly it's disabled, so you can't do it right now, but when it's back in live, go to the Whitespark Google review generator. It will give you a specific link. So I'm just typing in modern law. This is the link down here. You can actually just copy this URL and then open up a Bitly account. And in the upper right up here, you can say create. And then you paste your long URL in there. Look how long that sucker is. You wouldn't want to send that to anybody. But you can actually have it generate this short link. You can also pay and get a branded link if you really want to, like, you know, modern law, bit.ly, bit.ly/modern law. You could copy for
Oh,
that.
you can change that without a paid link, just so you know. If you click on that
Okay.
customize back half down below, one more, Chad.
Sorry, I have a pop-up. One sec.
Just
ahead.
right here, right, customize back half, right above there.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
just edit that, and you can make it be whatever you want it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah. So check this out. So you can basically create it, save it, send that link. Oh, good job, Billy. You have your own link. Nice work.
Woo,
I don't know what I'm going to find. I don't know. So I'm just going to copy this and show you. But once I go to that link, let's just say I clicked it. Look where it brings me right away. It's like the most epic hack ever. It brings you right to the Google My Business listing. My internet's slow because there's a lot going on. This is much faster in real life, but it brings you right to where someone can leave a review, and it cuts out all the crap. All the other, you don't want someone to have to click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times and then leave a review. Make it as easy as possible. And that's part of the process, right? Make it easy. So that was literally just one click. They come right to this screen on their cell phone, on their desktop, not on your Wi-Fi, boom. And you have a great way to get a review right away. And so that relationship piece, you can train any of your staff when you're at a high point of any relationship. It doesn't have to be the end. It doesn't have to be anything. You can have someone leave a review midpoint, if you're at a high, right? But ask for that review when you're at a high. That's one thing that Jill Coyle mentioned at a conference recently that I really like. She's a divorce attorney in Salt Lake. And she has great ways to respond to poor reviews. So hit us up and I can send you a couple links that are hilarious.
Depending on your state bar rules.
Yeah, depending on.
That's a little bit of a challenge for us that maybe you guys can address is like, we have a lot of different Google My Businesses, 4 of them. So how to get like great reviews and enough reviews in all of those places is a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, the one thing that I will say on that is you can choose where you send people to. I think it's always best to say, hey, whoever's from these markets, review this place. But where law's a little different, where it's not like Subway, where this location for Subway is very vastly different from this location. Like, it's pretty much the same law firm. You're working with the same people. They just might be meeting you at different offices. So I feel a little more comfortable saying, like, hey, if you have an office that you need to redirect reviews to, even though that's not the office where that person lives, you're okay to do that. Is it best practice? It's better practice. It's not the best, but if you need to spread them, then that doesn't go against any level of guidelines, at least. Okay, next, Dax. We've talked quite a bit about reviews. I've got
a couple more with reviews that can be answered quickly. One, do you know when GMB reviews will resume? And when they do resume, if people left negative reviews, are those going to come through?
Yes, Google hasn't said. So my guess is when they're back to work. And then as far as will the negative ones come up, they haven't said that either. I think there's a high probability that all reviews that are left during that time will appear. And then I'm just wondering if they're going to have this huge log of like edits where they'll take reports and they'll have to wade through those. I don't imagine, just because I know the importance that Google places on reviews, that they'll scrape all of what happens during that time. I can't imagine that they'll want to get rid of that information or not show that information when they're in the race to basically beat out Facebook and Yelp and solidify their spot as the place for reviews on the web. So there's no exact data or timeline or anything else right now.
Okay. How do you find a balance between different platforms for paid advertising? So LinkedIn, Facebook, Google. Some people are super anti-Google. Google, I think we've kind of addressed that already. But how do you find a balance across all of them?
Chad, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think part of the balance is really evaluating your goal, right? I'm not saying that Facebook can't be a quick turnaround, because I think there's definitely ways where you can get in front of people who are interested based on how you target, right? But one thing, a lot of the case studies that we have show it as more of a replacement channel for other more expensive, less targetable channels like TV and billboard and other things, right? So it's a long-term play in that sense, right? So I wouldn't say like go heavy into Facebook if you want leads tomorrow, you know, like you would go heavy into Facebook if you want to build your brand and also, you know, just create kind of a snowball effect with your reach, you know, with your reach from month to month to month. So we saw huge gains at 6 months, at 12 months, at 18 months. So if you do need leads tomorrow, like I talked to a criminal defense attorney. She's like, I've never had to pay for a lead in my whole life. Tons of referrals. It's been great until about 4 weeks ago. And now I think I might go into a foreclosure. And so it's like, well, you have one choice. You basically have one choice, which is get someone who really knows what they're doing with Google Ads and pay them to get you leads today or tomorrow, so to speak, right? Like you don't have a lot of flexibility. So it may be, you know, the pendulum may swing one way or the other, but I think one thing that everyone can probably agree on is anyone who's already coming to your website via SEO, any offline marketing, any kind of social media presence you have, and they come to your website, they've shown enough interest to come and visit, you need to retarget and remarket them when they leave. Like at a very minimum, you can do that across all the channels. You know, you can do that across Facebook, you can do that across everything. So that's the very minimum you should be thinking about right now. You may not want to go all in, and that's totally okay. I don't think you should just because you can. I think it's just evaluating your goals. So if you want to protect that, which you already have, which is coming to you, to your website, remarketing, you got to do that at least, you know? So I think there's a lot though. There's
the one thing I would add to that is the goal for every firm should be to have your local pillars covered. Like you need to target people at all aspects of the marketing funnel. And like, this won't be the last time we have a downturn. This won't be the last time we probably have some type of epidemic. Like there's a high probability this becomes a new normal. And if that's the case, then how are you protecting yourself for the next time so that not all of your eggs are in one basket? And the best way to do that is have a plan that is with paid, have a plan that's with organic, have a plan that's with your referral network, have a plan that's you going out into the community and building your brand. Like you need to do all the things so that no matter which way it gets attacked, there's still something that's working better than something else. And that's ultimately what I've seen through this, is that the firms that were doing real marketing and had a good overall strategy covering all their bases, they might be hit, but they're still getting cases, they're still getting things done, and they're still having hope for the future because they're positioned well to come out of this. It's the ones that had all their eggs in one basket, and then once that basket looks like it's running dry, they get super fearful, they pause it or cut it off and completely, and then we look at the situation and they're like, you know, well, I've got to cut my advertising because I'm nervous, I'm not getting leads right now, I can't pay, I'm just, you know, and it's tough. Well, guess what? That becomes self-fulfilling prophecy because you just cut your ads, meaning that when this is done, you're still nowhere to be found. So I'm hopeful that it's quick and people can turn that back on and be in front of the channels that they used to. But those who are spread across, you know, with a good overall marketing strategy are those who are going to walk out of this and pick up a lot of market share.
Okay. We've got this question. We've kind of got two. I know Chad's typing as well. Any thoughts on how to help immigration law firms specifically during COVID? We had one immigration attorney in here say they're testing, you know, yeah, the agencies are closed, courts are closed, airlines are closed. Why should I apply now? Their response has always been, you can be first in line when things reopen, so let's start now. They're not seeing a ton of success from that. So Chad, what are you telling them in the chat, or how can you answer that other question about immigration?
I think there's two ways that you can approach this, and I responded to that in the answered section, but one thing that you can do is like really think through what are the top questions surrounding your practice area right now and what kind of problems are people having, and immediately provide value for those. Immediately provide value by recording a video, just something simple, 1 to 3 minutes, something in that range where you address these specific types of questions, where it's like, hey, I may not be able to get you right now as a client, but I can provide you as much value along the way until courts are reopened and it makes sense to contact us. And as you do that, like, you can stay highly relevant, very, very good content will attract that person back, right? So maybe you have to change your sales outlook and how you're going to close that business. From a short term, this would be a, in the bag type client, to, hey, I'm going to have to be patient and really provide value along the way and then ask for the sale much later. I think that's probably at least, half of the equation. The other half is those questions. A lot of other people probably have them too. And you can use those 1 to 3 minute videos on Facebook, answering those questions, targeting those people, who may have those exact same things. People who come to the website, leave, continue to show them ads, answering these questions in long form. And I think that can just be a really good way to stay top of mind and provide value in a time of a lot of uncertainty for people who are trying to get into the country. Or, what do I do with my share with my husband, my custody share? Like, how do you navigate that? I don't know, but like Billie would know, Billie would know. And giving people those answers is probably really helpful right now, even though they may not be ready to pull the trigger because it's just really bad timing.
Okay.
I think we're kind of maybe just one more question. We're kind of pushing it on time, and if people do need to drop out, that's fine. But we'll take a couple more questions and then be done.
Cool. Is there a way to have clients easily write a Google review with an alias or first name and last name initial? I think this is going back to criminal defense reviews and people not wanting to put their names on things.
So I don't think, does Google force full name? It's whatever they have in their profile. And then the other thing is, if you can't get it on Google, you can do that on other platforms easier, such as Avvo. Yelp does, usernames, so people can choose what they have there. I need to pull up the Google reviews. For a while, they were like hard-nosed. They have to be the full name. Shoot, I think I can't get that to open. So any further thoughts on that, Chad? I haven't looked at that in a little bit.
Like, I changed my name to that guy.
So it doesn't leave it? Yeah, that's fair.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not exactly the fastest way, not the easiest way, but I mean, people could do that. I don't know. Like I said, at that point, I think it really comes back to the law of large numbers. The more people you get coming through the review process, the more chances you'll have of, if you make that process easy, I think the better chances are that you'll get reviews. I think it's probably your best bet for when anonymity probably matters. And also just probably taking advantage of someone who has a DUI, DWI. There's a lot less shame around that than other types of, crimes. And I've seen other people, get better reviews, get more reviews from that type of a practice area and less from, your more serious crimes that may have, more questions around them. But that might be a strategy to pursue, as well as just pursue a little harder practice areas that just don't have as much, negativity around them, even though it's not all positive anyway,
Okay. What is your opinion of direct mail advertising? A friend of mine broached this subject with me last week. He specializes in lung cancer due to asbestos exposure. I'm considering mailing a letter to current clients, updating them on what we are doing during this time, listing all our practice areas, and talk about the work my friend is doing.
Have you dealt much with direct mail, Chad?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So So I know some firms that use direct mail newsletters, and they keep in touch with their clients via that and are able to get out messages. I've heard of others that have used direct mail fairly effectively for criminal as well, in the criminal space. I don't know. I have not recently dove into cost or looking at like the acquisition side of that to see how it relates or compares with online. So I don't know if I'd be very good at answering that. Billie, have you done or played in the direct mail space at all?
I have, but it hasn't been successful. So it doesn't mean that you won't be successful. I just haven't been.
Yeah, the best direct mail that I've seen has been newsletters, which is not like a direct hard sell. It's just been like, instead of sending an email newsletter, people print it and send it out in the mail still. And they still do the email side as well. And, you know, there's things, you're building brand through that. I just look at that as another type of display advertising. So hopefully, yeah, that's one that I don't have enough data to speak on.
Okay. Here's a pretty straightforward one. How long must a blog post be in order to be effective, assuming it's otherwise fully optimized?
You know, my take on this is a little different. So like in studies that we've seen, there's high reason to think that a blog post needs to be, you know, over 1,000 words, but really the answer is, and should be this, it needs to be long enough to do what it's meant to do, right? For instance, I published blog posts back in the day that were pictures. They were picture based, and they were like, we call them common graphics. They only had, you know, 150 words on them, but they had tons of traffic. They ranked really well and everything else, simply because they got a lot of links and it accomplished what it was meant to do. So if you're looking at just numbers, like, and the piece is fairly standard and you're going up against other pieces that are fairly the same, then having a piece that's more detailed with Q&A and a lot of information can rank higher. If it's just going, you know, if you're like word for word comparison and yours does a better job of answering the questions. But that doesn't mean that every blog post needs to be a certain amount of length. It goes to what you're trying to accomplish. So that study that we had does look at landing pages and how many words on each of those landing pages that were showing up ranking. So you can look at that specific one and we can score against that as well.
Yeah, Billie, feel free to chime in. Just one thought is sometimes you also have to evaluate whether or not it should be a blog or not in the first place. Sometimes things like blogs are tricky to just proliferate because they're tied to a date. So anything that's tied to a date will naturally over time, 6 months from now, be a lot less relevant than it was today, right? And so sometimes if it's not important to be dated, like if there's no reason to date stamp it, then it's sometimes better just to make it an article so that it can withstand the test of time, really.
Or continue to update and date stamp, change the date stamp.
Yeah, or you have to do that, right? But like the other side of that is if you're creating an article that is continuing to update on the same subject, you know, like how have things changed with COVID from day 1 to day 30? It's gotten a lot different, right? Probably a good reason to have a blog, right? Because day 1 may not matter anymore, you know? Day 30 may really matter. It should really matter, right? So really think through whether or not it should be a blog and it should be dated in the first place. And if not, make it an article, you know, make it an article that can withstand the test of time and continue to add to that article as you see fit. Make it just a super big piece of content that's really, really dives deep.
Do you think a Facebook ad or a Corona-related blog post is better for leads?
I'm curious. I want Billie to answer this one first, and then we can share our thoughts if she wants to.
So what I I have been doing on Corona related stuff is creating videos. Like our courthouse issued guidelines and for parenting plans, and it was long, it was like 7 pages. So I turned it into I think a 7 series of videos, uploaded them to Facebook, made a playlist, uploaded them to YouTube, to the channel, got transcripts, and put them on the website. So I don't think it's either or. I think you put it everywhere.
That's exactly what I was going to say. In that case, if I was to do it, I would make a COVID piece, right? Put it on the website, use ads, share it on Facebook, YouTube, all these other things if you can do video. And video, just so people know, especially now more than ever, the quality of video, like the camera and all of that, matters less now than ever, because people are not going to judge you for sitting in your house making a video, right? Like, so you can make those videos. It's about the content. Okay. And same for a blog post, it's about the content, and those that do well share well. And so you put it on the site and you put it online, and that's the key. I wouldn't just put it on Facebook and not try to bring that back to your site somehow or drive people to your website. The second they're on your website, they can sign up for an email, and you get their information. They might be able to call you, or you can use tracking on your site to be able to remarket or target them again in the future. So everything should try to get them onto your website.
All right, we'll have this one be our last question. And it's kind of targeted towards Billie, but Billie, do you think you could go into a little bit more detail and share your standard operating procedure for the Zap that you were talking about, where you send thank you cards immediately?
Yeah, sure. So is my contact information anywhere?
We can.
I will be emailing it out to everybody. So
yeah, feel free to email me, and it's kind of like it's going to be like pages, because here's the Zap and here's the stuff, but I'm happy to share that.
Perfect. Kay, that's all the questions on our end, Mike and Chad.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for jumping on this webinar, and we hope that you've enjoyed it. We'd like to give a very special thanks to Attorney at Work again for being able to push this out and make this an opportunity for us here at Nifty and for Billie at Modern Law to be a part of. And we hope to talk to you soon. So remember, if you'd like to hit up our Facebook group, it's bit.ly and then /help my law firm, or you can hit up niftymarketing.com/score, and we'll score your website up against all the data points that we gathered. So thank you, and we look forward to talking to you in the future.